All right. I'd like to welcome everyone back and thank you for coming for this closing session with the Competition Authority. We're I'm Professor Sean Ennis. I'm Director of the Center for Competition Policy at the University of East Anglia, and really just delighted to have been invited to chair this panel with competition leaders today. And we're really honored to be joined by three authorities in this session. In particular, from the Polish Competition Authority, we have Thomas Krosny. He is the head of the authority and has worked previously on doing things like auditing financial statements, valuation, detection of crime and fraud, as well as economic, market, and sector analysis. So has a very broad background that's relevant for this type of work, and has also a good experience in some other areas of government, having worked in the Prime Minister's office and as a director of economic analysis in one of the technology ministries, which I think makes for some of the questions being very relevant, not only to your current job, but your prior background. Fabienne Siredi-Garnier is joining us from the Autorité de la Concurrence, the French Competition Authority, where she's been a vice president since 2018. She's one of the full-time vice presidents, and therefore I think may have some of the longest experience of being a leader in that authority among all the people there, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, and so she also has a history of working in the magistrature and prosecution in courts throughout several major jurisdictions in France, and has worked for the Ministry of Justice and the EU Legal Service in the past as well. Finally, we're joined by Hara Nikolapoulou, who's with us virtually. She was not able to join us in person today, unfortunately. She's a vice president of the authority with a background as a lawyer and has worked there since 2011 in various positions. Before that, she worked at the Telecom and Post Commission, and then a competition practice of law firms in Athens and Brussels, as well as at the European Commission. So we're really delighted, I think, to be joined by these different areas of expertise in the authorities. So a big welcome to our panelists. And I think, since this is the last panel session, it's worth just looking back a little bit on the days that have been in the past few days, and I think they've really been very high quality, information packed, and so thanks very much to Lear for organizing that. Now we're going to try to continue that in this session as well. So we've got I'm going to start racing through here with some substantive questions. And I just note at the beginning to kind of keep your attention that Poland is going to have the next chair presidency of the EU. So I'm going to ask a question at the end to get a hint of what's coming in the future. So stick with us until then. And then maybe we'll get some clues and maybe we won't. But we'll find out. So I'd like to begin with Thomas, actually. Do you have any activities in this relatively new area of a labor focus of competition activity, and especially relating, for example, to no-poach agreements?
Thanks a lot. Thank you very much, and especially to the organizer for organizing such a nice event in September in Rome, connected to competition, what to expect more. But I understand that it's Friday, those who decided to stay expect more, and it's quite challenging right now. I discussed this with Nuno that had the panel of the first day, and I told him that we maybe has to somehow make it more flexible, a little more fun, and he told, don't do that. I have just told a joke during the panel, and no one recognized it was a joke. So it's really serious. These topics are really serious one. And over the last couple of years, we really are trying to find a connection between the competition and an economy. And honestly speaking, labor market and competition has more and more value for us rather than many years ago. In the last couple of years, we have conducted a couple cases, mainly connected to sport activity. During the COVID, after the COVID, we had two decisions concerning sport activities. One of them was the violation of the basketball league, when they decided to terminate the contract with the players and decided not to pay enough. And they decided to pay only the part, decided between each other how to resolve this problem. And we also decided that we'll make an investigation, and it was penalized, and we released the decision under 101. The second issue we had was a speedway league that we realized, and we also has made many actions here during the proceeding, that the clubs are setting the maximum wage and maximum salary for the players. And we also has made an investigation and released a decision under 101. And last year and this year, we had some different actions, and probably it's preliminary investigation, but we see that it has a huge potential, and that's why we decided to make it into steps. Firstly, we decided to make a soft law. We decided to show that the connection between the competition law and labor market is much stronger than entrepreneurs usually think. And that's why we also decided to prepare a document showing that these connections are strong, what to be careful about, many wage fixing, no poaching agreements, and other collusions that may be not so typical under our previous experiences. For instance, how many days working outside the office employees have. We showed that employees are not only the people that are employed under the contract, but this can be also, for instance, self-proprietorships or other contracts on mandatory. So much different view or broader view on this topic, and we decided, okay, if we want to show it to every entrepreneurs and discuss this issue with the market, we have to make it like, competition law and labor market for dummies. So as simple as it's possible, with pictures, with definitions, with clear examples, but only in a way that can be understood easily by not only the biggest players, but also the really small entities. And one of the main reasons we decided was not only because our previous experiences with the sport leagues and basketball teams, and also they were convinced that competition law is something that is beyond them. It was amazing, honestly, these people. They came to us and they tried to convince it that competition law doesn't matter to them because they are sport. It is sport, These are emotions, not the business. Come on. We know each other that it's a business and a big one. And that's why we decided that we have to show to the market why and what is abandoned under the law. And right now we have really nice case. It's a preliminary investigation when we also had made an inspection downgrade. We are checking right now whether 2 of top 3 retain chains in Poland, top 1 and top 3, whether they use their power and coordinated activities that we are right now checking over the companies that are subcontractors to them. It's a really huge business, to be honest. For instance, the top Polish retain chain has 45 billion euros turnover. So the third one has 7 billion, so it's much smaller player, but still we are checking after some information whether there is no agreement concerning truck drivers' wages. The second issue, of course, those are actions taken that could be taken in order not to compete over the truck drivers between companies. And the third that I also mentioned was whether these retain chains had a special role to manage the situation in order not to compete between companies because they were afraid, for instance, that the wages will increase and then the cost of transportation and action of the suppliers and subcontractors will also increase. So we see that this kind of connection across the economy can be also harmful to the economy, and we believe that this connection between labor and competition law is something that also touches the society, and we should also take more care about these actions. Thanks a lot.
Okay, thank you very much, Thomas. Now, I wonder if we can move over to Fabienne. We've recently had a quite important decision from the courts on Illumina Grail, and I wonder how you see the future treatment of under-the-threshold deals as a result. Could you talk about your thoughts and experience on topics like using 101 and 102 for mergers and also on Article 22?
Thank you, Sean, and thank you for having me for the third, is it okay? For the third time in this beautiful conference. So perhaps before the future, a little background to begin with, because I have to say that the French Competition Authority had called for such a revised approach of Article 22 in a number of occasions before Margaret Vestager announced it in 2020, and we have therefore been very supportive of these steps. In the Illumina case, France was the jurisdiction that made the initial referral request, and then several other member states decided to join us. The reason is, I think, simple. We believed that the deal threatened to significantly affect competition within France and the EU more globally, and that the specificities of this case, very innovative markets, acquirer with strong power market, target as an important innovator with a pipeline product that might revolutionize the fight against cancer. The turnover of the target did not reflect its actual or future competitive potential, was a typical example of a case which was worth reviewing under Article 22. It's also important to mention that our call for a revised approach of Article 22 did not come out of nowhere, but was the result of two public consultations, one in 2017 on the modernization of French merger control, and the other in 2018 on ex post control. At that time, we were envisaging the creation of a new type of merger control aimed at dealing with below-the-threshold transactions that were likely to give rise to competition concerns, in particular in the digital economy as well as in the pharmaceutical or biotechnology sector. What came out from these consultations was that a revised approach of Article 22 was relatively the most appropriate and proportionate response to better address the phenomenon of predatory or consolidating acquisitions under the thresholds. But, of course, the rest is history. And now we need to draw the necessary consequences from the court judgment and be as pragmatic as possible in our approach. The first important point I would like to make is that the concern that we had expressed back in 2017 on transactions that fall below the thresholds are still valid. And I would even say that they are stronger than before in some economic sectors where innovation plays a key role. And we shall not forget that the Illumina Grail case has been ultimately prohibited by the European Commission. We are therefore referring to transactions that possibly have serious anti-competitive effects, and we cannot accept to simply let these deals slip through. So how can we move forward? Quite surprisingly, I have to say that what comes out from the combination of the Towercast and the Illumina rulings is that the control of mergers below the thresholds is ultimately referred back to the member states, either through Articles 101 and 102, which the Commission might not be able to use for concentrations, or under national law. To me, this means moving far away from the one-stop shop principle, and more importantly, it leads to a fragmentation of the single market, which I find problematic as a message coming from the court. Drawing on this, a few remarks on what might be next. First, in the risk of disappointing some of you, I think that Article 22 is not dead. Since the revised approach on Article 22 was initiated, the legislative landscape at national level has changed, and we see a growing number of national competition authorities, 10 at the moment, I think, benefiting from different call-in systems, along with more traditional turnover-based thresholds. This means more and more national competition authorities having the national competence required by the court to review these types of deals and to possibly refer them to the Commission under Article 22. Secondly, in the short run, we need to make full use of tools that are already available to us. I think, of course, in particular of Articles 101 and 102 of the treaty in the wake of the Towercast ruling of March 2023. So the French Competition Authority has already been active in this area. As for Article 102, I shall mention that in the direct wake of Towercast, the Paris Court of Appeal has decided that an acquisition below the thresholds could indeed be examined as a possible abuse of dominance. And we have another case pending, which should be issued at the beginning of next year, which is of particular interest for discussion on real killer acquisition. And as for Article 101, I have to say that the French Competition Authority was the first to rule in this question in a recent antitrust case in the meat-cutting sector published last May. We found that the transactions at the root of the case were mergers below the threshold, which no one disputed. We rejected the argument that there was a market allocation plan, but we considered that as the transactions were mergers, the Towercast ruling allowed us, because of the direct effect of the treaty, to review their legality a posteriori on the basis of that article. But of course, even though the use of these tools was also suggested by the court in Illumina, these ex post intervention have some limitations. And I'm not sure that companies would feel comfortable arguing that this type of ex post control ensures a higher degree of legal certainty as compared to the Article 22 system, but so it is. I cannot say much on this stage because in France we need a majority maybe to adopt the bill, and you know it's now complicated. But I can already say that a well-balanced call-in system which provides us a certain flexibility while ensuring as much legal certainty as possible for business could be an appropriate tool. And conversely, we do not necessarily favor certain options. Very doubtful on the relevance of the changing the nature of our thresholds. And as for lowering the thresholds, it does not seem for us an appropriate solution. It will overburden firms and the authority, and we rather has taken the opposite view recently.
Okay, thank you very much. Really quite an active and fascinating set of developments in the last year. Now, Hera, if I can, I'd like to jump over to you just for a quick comment. How do you feel about revising thresholds downwards? Is that a possibility from the perspective of the Greek authority, or do you think it's better to have simple and wide discretion by the authorities?
Hello, thank you very much. First of all, I'd like to say I'm very sorry that I'm not in the wonderful Rome and I'm only online. I'll try to be as present as possible in this discussion with Sean's help and my co-panelists. And I don't really have very much to add to what Fabienne said, since I fully agree. Greece was also one of the requesting countries in Illumina Grail. We also believe that turnover did not reflect the competitive potential of the target. It concerns markets, innovative markets. The target was an innovator itself, so we were one of the countries that joined France in this referral. We're looking at this, at the result, the court case, and it is indeed a fact. The court said that member states are open to revise downwards their own thresholds. I'm not a big fan of this this approach. I think that in any case it would need a very, very careful assessment of how many more notifications we're going to get, the majority of which will probably have no issue. So I think that it's a better approach to have more flexibility when we're deciding which cases we're going to look on, rather than revise our thresholds downwards and be receiving a lot more notification, which will mean a lot more work for us without actual competition problems being there, and of course a lot more work for the parties and for the companies. So to be clear on my answer, I think that it's better to have more discretion, call-in options, and this is something that we are discussing with no conclusion reached yet.
Okay, thank you very much, Hara. Now we're going to jump back to Thomas. And I wonder if you can, we're going to change focus, and I wonder if you can discuss some of your recent experience in another area of institutional or legal change, which may tie into dawn raids in Poland. And I wonder, can you tell us about the role of dawn raids at your authority?
Now it works. It's probably the most important role, honestly speaking, right now, as it's more and more complex right now to analyze the material and to get a proper material during the investigation, when such techniques of communication has changed rapidly over the last years. So honestly, over the last 2 or 3 years, we are performing yearly from 9 to 11 inspections, mainly down raids. And they cover, for instance, last year, they cover 45 entities and their premises. So we are taking lots of action right now, and we took lots of action in the last 3 years to increase our capacities to make down raids. Firstly, we decided to invest much more in IT equipment that is necessary right now. Each year we see the progress in data we are analyzing during the proceeding, and it's a huge data and huge amounts. And the problem that we also are identifying is that we have more and more sources of data. So you also need more complex IT environment to analyze different sources of data, not the emails, more than communicators. And also right now we communicate more on smartphones and the applications like Signal and WhatsApp that also make it possible for the messages to disappear. So it's more complex to get the proper value and the proper quality of information to check whether there is an agreement or not. Secondly, we invest a lot in field engineers, as we understand that to make more investigation and more down raids, we need to have better prepared team. And right now we are still training the staff. We have divided the staff into 2 groups. One is the staff that is always in the investigation and inspection, many field engineers and IT specialists, and the second that are being changed over the projects we have. Third, we decided to make some improvement in law. Right now we can account for more support from the police when we are going for the down rate. We have also specified some issues concerning LPP and down rates and searches in residential premises in order to have more clarification also for the society and the entrepreneurs. And honestly speaking, we also see that over the last years when we have really nice cases, down rates were absolutely crucial, and the quality of information that we get to know where, to whom, to what for we should look for. And it also shows that over the upcoming years we need much more flexibility also on the basis of the law to conduct inspection and down rates. Last years were also the topics that are much more important for the society, honestly speaking. And even this year, yesterday we communicated inspection in ABB Group, so the company responsible for equipment, mainly also in the energy sector. We have also cases concerning tractors, the best recognized one like Claas, Massey Ferguson, New Holland, and many others, when we also are checking whether they have some clauses and agreements that could limit and harm competition. Xiaomi is one of the cases that we have also under the investigation and inspection. So we see that if we want to understand perfectly what has happened to get the proper material, we need this kind of tools, we need more flexibility, and of course information right now is the basis to get to eliminate the practice. And to get information when the technology is changing so fastly, we need not only the budget, but people who are experienced and the tools that are under the legal basis that give us this flexibility to check what we have inside the company. And of course, across the country, honestly speaking, there's absolutely different level how it can be done. For instance, we had to change the law and right now we can make it in the manner that we can continue inspection and checking data inside the central office of our institution. But for many years we had to continue it on place, and still many actions we have to continue on the place. When, for instance, we have colleagues that are going for one day, taking everything and then analyzing in the office. And of course it's the issue of the trust between the countries and between the NCAs and the society. Those countries usually that have, for instance, regulation that gives possibility to go take everything and check it inside the central office. These are usually countries where people believe that it's not a fishing expedition and everything will be trustfully and legally checked. And societies, mainly in the CE region, are more trusted to FAMM rather than public entities. And it's also the way we have to work hard to show that to get good results for the economy and to the society has to trust us and give us more competencies in this area. Thanks a lot.
Okay, thank you. So we can think of dawn raids as one of the great tools in the pocket of competition authorities. And
it's true, but on the other hand, it's one issue that if you look on what's happening in law, EU law, for the last 5 years, privacy is one of the values that people expect that will be protected more. And in the same time, they want to be protected inside the economy. They don't want to pay more because of RPMs or cartels. So it's the question how to make these two values protected and what kind of tools and regulations need to be implemented, especially as we have some like hedging between the privacy and, for instance, government companies are fully aware what they can do in each country.
Yes, right. Challenge. I mean, that's certainly been a challenging problem even before the last 5 years, I would say, for a lot of authorities. And I wonder now, talking about another tool, if we can move over to HARA, and if you could talk about the regulatory intervention tool that you have at the Greek authority. Can you describe it, say how it's used, and in the context I think that everyone is interested in at the moment, how does this fit into the Draghi report suggestion? Is this the same sort of thing that the report is calling for? I wonder if you could discuss especially one of the major cases, or I guess that might not be the correct word, but one of the major applications of this tool that you've had with respect to the petroleum supply chain in Greece. I think you have a quite remarkable report which is in a language that most of us don't speak, so perhaps you can fill us in on what's there.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Sean. Yes, indeed. According to our law, and since 2005 actually, we may examine a certain sector of the economy, and if we see that there are no conditions of effective competition, that can be, and there are issues that cannot be addressed with our Articles 1 and 2, the equivalent of 101 and 102, then we can take any necessary measure for the creation of effective competition. So this has been used not many times, 3 times. This is the 4th now. The first time was back in 2007, again in the petroleum industry. There was a series of interventions and proposals to the central government. Some of them were taken up and some were not. So we returned to the sector in 2022. We started by using a different tool that we have available. This is the mapping. The ability to map the market. So we can launch an investigation just to see what's happening in the market and to have an overview of the conditions of competition. What were we looking for? We were looking, when we started the mapping process in 2022, to see whether decreases are faster than price increases, the rockets and feathers phenomenon, whether it applies in the industry. If there was an asymmetry in the price adjustment between the different stages of the petroleum industry, we looked at refining at wholesale and at retail level, and at which stage this asymmetry originates from. We were looking whether to find the degree of price pass-through in the production chain. We were looking to see the effects of this phenomenon on consumer surplus. Of course, we had an eye on seeing what kind of measures can help deal with this. And what we found was that the highest retail price acts as a focal point, that there are delays integrating low prices into fuel supply. We also found that there's a lot of asymmetry, but in consumer information about the price development, and that depending on storage capacity, there is an incentive for high prices when international prices are low, and in times where there are international prices are high, retail prices are automatically adjusted upwards as storage is not profitable. So we looked at these, the results of this mapping investigation, and we decided that we should, the Commission decided that we should proceed with regulatory intervention, which is of course much more interventionist than a mapping inquiry. We looked closer and deeper at the conditions of competition in the 3 production distribution chains. Again, we looked at refining, wholesale, and retail. We chose 3 products because we could not do anything. We chose 95 octane unleaded petrol, diesel, and heating oil in the Greek market, of course. Why we chose these? We chose them because they are prime basic necessities with low price and elastic demand. And this August, we published our preliminary views. What does this mean? This means that we published our views out for consultation. The consultation is still running until the 15th of October. We're waiting to hear what all the stakeholders will say. And then we have to get back to our report and see which of these comments we should incorporate or further investigate and issue a final report, which will be in the coming months. This report is a very long document. As Sean said, it's in Greek. It's 300 pages long. But I think that there's a lot of information that you can find in English in our press releases, and in a dedicated webpage that we have on our website. If if I have a few minutes, I'd just like to say a few things about what we found, because I think it's quite interesting, and it also touches upon your question about what it has to do with a new competition tool. So we looked at the price pass-through from the Platts price to the refining price for each product. And first we extended the pass-through assessment spoke temporarily and geographically. We looked at the mechanisms of pricing policy and the parameters that shaped it. We do know that we are in a period of two shocks. One was because of the COVID pandemic, and the second one was because of the war in Ukraine. So that has to feed into our assessment also. And what we found was there's an alignment and a parallel evolution of prices. There are marginal price differences between the two refining companies in the fourth and the fifth decimal. In both periods under consideration, we looked at two periods between 2019 and 2022. The refining margins increased, even though there were opposite trends in the movement of crude oil and end products, the movement of the prices. Despite the increased refining margin that resulted from the first shock, the refining companies did not show any operating profits in 2020. Probably that's because of the low demand. But on the contrary, during the second shock, there was significant operating products for the refining companies because there was an increased demand and a relatively increased production from these companies. And we saw price increases over time. We looked at imports. We found that they do not exert any significant competitive pressure on the refiners. And this absence of imports, combined with some restrictions on storage facilities and increased stocking costs, constituted barriers to entry. We saw an asymmetric pass-through in various parts of the, from refining down to retail price in various parts. This is not consistent. In some places we find asymmetry, in others we do not. We saw that the refiners do hedge at least a significant part of their risk and pass it on to customers, which have no alternative source of supply. These results came out. As I said, they're open to consultation. At the first stage of our inquiry, we do not have to propose measures. What we do is we identify the problems. And I think we have identified some problems. We're waiting to see what the stakeholders will say and bring them back and issue our final report. So I think that this new competition tool that's also been referred to, the Draghi report, exists already in our national legal system, and it has been used, not very often, but it has. I think it's, we find it a very a useful tool, but a tool that has to be used with a lot of caution because it gives us a lot of power, and we have to be very, very sure about the measures that we're proposing, because the law tells us that we can take any necessary measure. That's a lot of power, and we have to be very, very sure that what we're proposing is proportionate and necessary to the actual problems identified.
Okay, thank you very much, Hara, and some useful warnings, I think, about the care with which such an instrument needs to be treated by
Definitely, a lot of care. And I think that this is also a good example of how we use various tools. So we started from the mapping. We looked to see what's happening, and then we moved on to the regulatory intervention. And it's ongoing. Hopefully next year I'll tell you how it went and what we came down to, what the reactions were.
Yes. Okay. I think we've had a little bit of discussion, I suppose, about various aspects of legal certainty and how they've been perhaps affected by some of these tools that we have. Now, I wanted to jump over to Fabienne and ask whether you could talk about what we could think of as the evolving toolbox for digital related cases, and do you think that competition law is proving fit for the digital age? And I wonder if you could touch on specifics here. So specific cases, commitments, injunctions, fines from the French authority experience.
Thank you, Sean. So, of course, we must remain vigilant and ready to make full use of our toolbox. And, of course, we have also to coordinate our action with the DMA. But we should not forget that Article 102 is still a flexible, pragmatic, and powerful tool to address anti-competitive practices by dominant companies, especially new types of behavior that are not covered by the DMA. So, for more than a decade now, the French Competition Authority has been using this article as one of its primary tools to tackle harmful conducts in the digital sphere with, I have to say, a fair amount of success. These cases, as you all know, raise new challenges, which I believe can be overcome thanks to the comprehensive procedural tools which we enjoy: interim measures, remedies, settlement, and, of course, fines. Let me talk about interim measures. The first critical issue we have to address is the fast-changing nature of digital markets. And antitrust, we all know, has been blamed for being too slow, sometimes rightly so. So we have to answer by being faster. In this regard, the ability to issue interim measures can be extremely useful to prevent an imminent damage on the market. And we have accumulated a very significant experience in this field with more than 30 decisions in all sectors of the economy for an average investigation time of 6 months. Over the past years, this ability has proved especially useful to prevent distortion of competition in digital markets. Let me just quote 2 French cases. The first one is Meta Adlux. In May 2023, we made use of this instrument to order Meta to define objective, transparent, non-discriminatory, and proportionate criteria for accessing and maintaining partnerships in the ad verification sector. And the second one, I should say the saga Google-related rights of April 2020, in which the French Competition Authority required Google to negotiate with publishers and press agencies the remuneration due to them related rights. In 2022, we also used for the first time the new ability provided by the ECN Plus directive to analyze an interim measure on our own initiative. The case was finally dismissed, but I think that this new ability is a much welcome step to set our own enforcement agenda, and maybe more important, to overcome any fear of retaliation on the part of would-be complainants that are so heavily dependent on dominant platforms. But obviously, interim measures are not miracle solutions, and they have their downsides. The legal standard is really not easy to meet. And like remedies, they need to be monitored while the investigation on the merit is still pending. Again, in the Google rights-related case I just mentioned, we figure out later that Google did not comply with the interim measure decision, which resulted in a 500 million fine. Nevertheless, I do believe that interim measures are largely underutilized by EU competition enforcers, and without prejudging the outcome, the ongoing revision of the Regulation 1/2003 could be an opportunity to reconsider the legal standard which the European Commission has to meet in order to impose interim measures. Now, remedies. Sometimes a fine is not the right answer or simply not enough. In digital cases, commitments have become more prevalent in some situations where our main objective is not only to punish past abuses, but to restore the competitive landscape for the future. This is where behavioral remedies can be relevant, in particular when competition concerns can be addressed by imposing an open, fair, and pro-competitive framework. Again, Google-related rights, that's why I call it a saga, following the interim measure decision. In 2022, we accepted Google's commitment to create a framework. I don't go into details. We have another case, is Meta Criteo. In 2022, the authority was also the first competition authority to accept commitments from Meta in antitrust proceedings with the aim of addressing competition concerns in the French market for non-search related online advertising. But although we have overall good success stories to share, we are also hearing the growing criticism towards behavioral commitments. They demand close monitoring to be effective and be tricky and resource intensive to follow. And also, there can be a degree of ambiguity resulting from these procedures. The type of commitments that we now accept tends to be in a direct connection with the core of the businesses concerned. And by devising and supervising these remedies, we somehow intrude in a manner that is more akin to the job of a regulator than that of a competition enforcer. And yet, we have neither the means nor the legal basis for it. So the goal is to find the right balance and use this tool only when strictly necessary. And our message should be clear. If commitments don't work, we go back to fines, carrot and stick. And again, in the Google-related rights case, we found at the beginning of this year that Google did not comply with commitments, which resulted in a 250 million fines. So, as a conclusion on this point, I would like to stress that a lot can still be achieved on the ground of Article 102. We have 3 cases that are ongoing. The proceeding on the merits in the Google AdLooks case in the ad verification sector are making progress. The Apple ATT case, proceedings against Apple concerning the terms and conditions for protecting the personal data of iOS application users are continuing. A statement of objections was sent in July 2023, and the hearing is scheduled before the end of this year. And we have an investigation ongoing following Downred in the graphic processors unit sector, which is a key input for the training of AI models.
Okay, thank you very much. And I wonder if you could just follow up for a second about generative AI and whether you have any work going on there, apart from what you just mentioned.
Yes, this is a transition. Yes. Yes, of course. Horizon scanning is key to helping us better understand new and emerging digital markets and to feed our pipeline. So that's why, considering its potential impact on growth and productivity, as well as the competitive issues it already raises, generative AI was an obvious area to look into. And so that's why we launched an ex officio study on generative AI in February 2024, which was published only 4 months later and is now available in English in our website.
That's great. Thank you very much. So we'll need to be reading that, I think. And maybe over to Thomas. I think you also have some recent experiences on digital at your authority, and again, I'd like you to talk about some very specific topics. So you've got some cases, a case Allegro, privacy policy case, a video game industry case, and then maybe you could talk about some of your other activities.
I will try, but I see the agenda and an hour, and we have also, there's a nice point concerning the Mr. Draghi report, so I will try to focus on it, maybe within 2 hours answer the question. So concerning the digital world, we probably all know that it's absolutely totally prestigious for NCAs to have such cases. And, especially across the Europe, when we have GAFAM or GAMAM cases, it's a top prestigious, And I think that, honestly speaking, you mentioned about cases we have, I will just tell about them. But honestly speaking, over the DMA, I'm absolutely a king of DMA. It's a pleasure to be in high-level group of the DMA. And I believe that this biggest one should be, honestly speaking, at the level of European Commission to have, if we believe in the idea of the single market, then this type of proceedings should be inside the European Commission to have the fastest effect of compliance of all the countries. And good example is the Apple case and the changes in privacy policy that, in fact, we see that the effect is negative to the competition. And there are a couple of countries that are coping with this case, is Poland, Italy, France, and also others. So it shows that we need a coherency and we need to think how to manage the resources. And the second issue is that we are right now more focused on how it influences the Polish economy. So we had a really nice case concerning Allegro. It's the biggest e-commerce platform in Poland. They combat with eBay when it was strong and they failed. With Amazon, and Amazon also failed, and Allegro is working really well. And we found out that they have preferencing algorithms, and they prefer their goods via their own shop. So the case that also Amazon a couple of years ago tried to perform, and we also penalized them with the penalty of 45 million euros because it was under the theory of harm. They preferred their own goods. They used the whole functionality they had and that were limited to other contractors. So it was really great case showing how it can be done. And you mentioned one of the cases that we have, and I would like to mention the second one. So right now we are also focusing on the gaming sector. We have actions, we take actions, and we have preliminary investigation over the Steam platform and the Sony. And also we are checking how their functionalities, how the mechanism also of preference can harm their competition and also can have effects over the market. But we have third case that is one of the favorite we have, and the favorite for me, and it's over the pharmacy. So we have a case when it's the anti-monopoly case, when we see and we believe that pharmacy stores and their suppliers via the IT system use the IT system they have to compare the prices and have they seen the prices of other pharmacies, and thanks to it, the situation when they have full access to prices, they could easily also harm the competition. This market also is, in many countries, is also regulated. So the distances between pharmacy who can also make a pharmacy store and so on and manage it, they're also in Poland. And we see that it is a good example how digital world can make further step to harm a competition, because probably every one of us could imagine that within a couple of years we will have algorithm that will compare the distance between other store, between other pharmacy. If you have an access to prices and quantities, then you can use the whole potential, and it will be even more, it can harm the competition. It can have absolutely negative effect to the society. And it can be one of these cases that we also should focus on, because not only competition can be limited, but also these negative effects over the society, as it harms the position of older people or people who have, for instance, lower salaries or wages. It can be really difficult to the society and to the economy. So I think we should rather also focus on the areas when we have a strong connection between digital and the traditional economy, because we are focusing more on the gammon and less on the Chinese behemoths. And we are sometimes forgetting that these mechanisms are, in the faster manner, they are right now taken into the traditional way of making business. Thanks a lot.
Okay, thank you very much. And now I'd like to, Hara, just a quick word to you. We're going to jump ahead, okay, to the big question that's hanging out there, which is whether, well, I'd say this might be the first major competition conference since the Draghi report came out, and so it's really a great time to ask the question: what are your reactions to that report? Are there any strengths or weaknesses that you would like to note? And if we could keep it relatively brief, we'll go around. And Hara, I might start with you, just because you deserve some priority up there on the screen, and then we'll come back.
No, thank you. That's fine. Well, I think that at this point we'll just have to wait and see how it feeds in to a policy for competition and for competitiveness. Of course, it's a very welcome report, but we'll have to see how it feeds into policy. I think that its strongest point is the need to close the innovation gap and to make sure that more investment is put into European companies, coupled with the fact that although market power and monopoly is allowed in EU law and quite welcome, as the Commissioner said, but along with this, there's nothing to suggest that these companies are likely to invest more in innovation than the ones that are subject to competitive conditions. So I think the importance of innovation and this balance is something that we'll have to wait and see how it feeds into policy.
Okay, thank you.
I could say a lot more, but you said to keep it brief, and that's kind of
right.
The innovation issue is what I think is the most important part of this.
Okay.
Of this report. It goes actually quite back to what we were discussing at the very, very beginning, and about Illumina Grey. Why was it important? Why was it referred? Because it was about innovation markets, because its turnover did not reflect its potential to innovate. So I think it's very, very important.
Okay, thank you. Over to Tomasz now.
With a huge pleasure, honestly, for me, the Draghi report should be read with the Mr. Leto report. And it was really great to have this discussion and in the presentation of the Leto report. Honestly speaking, there are ideas that probably are close to us, and we could say, of course, they are true. So do we need more innovation? Of course we need. Do we need more resilience? Over the last 2 years, we see that, of course, we should have more resilience. Do we need higher productivity and more high-tech industrialization in Europe? Of course we need. And the idea of the single market is something that is absolutely close to us. And when we have seen the Draghi report, it was absolutely something, across the ideas, we are absolutely in line and under the same ground. But in Mr. Draghi report, it was honestly something surprising for us to see that there are not so many voices from the CE region. Like, over the last 20 years, we are still these countries are created like a new member states. 20 years, come on, It's like, I remember a guy who I met in one of the Polish villages who told that he is living here for 40 years, but for the whole society, he's still new. And so, he's 60 years old and everyone's, you are new. So I think that concerning these ideas, it's absolutely true. But the problem is the solution, because I think that we still are thinking, when we are thinking, for instance, about single market idea, we are focusing on telecom sector, and these reports are focusing on the defense, telephone sector and the banking sector. And they are not mentioning about non-tariff barriers, which we know from different couple reports, that these are billions of euros of the GDP growth, and no one right now is focusing on this area, and they still exist on the product level, not the services one. So we still have low-hanging fruits, And we are beyond that. We are not discussing this issue. And we are thinking, okay, let's change defense system and the banking sector when we have problems to make, a single market idea fully in line with the idea, because the practice is far, far away from the idea. The second issue is that inconsistency inside the policy. Because, for instance, a Green Deal. Green Deal is a great idea, honestly speaking, but the problem is it doesn't support EU industrialization at all. Because, the example of Mr. Letta of the defense sector, how much we pay for US equipment, is the same question within the Green Deal. Because all the heating pumps, photovoltaics, and many others are mainly produced in China. And we are, implementing Green Deal without taking further actions to make high-tech industrialization over this project. So we are donating China once again with a huge amount of money, and there's nothing over this topic once again. And the third area is what is the solution? Because we really believe that the solution is we need more competitiveness, and it's true. And whether the question arises, whether our merger law or competition law is the source of the problem, I think it's not. We need more competitiveness, not less. In the US right now, the discussion is not about less enforcement, but about more enforcement. So we need to identify and also discuss these reports. They're absolutely fantastic, but they are not so coherent, and we need to focus on how to implement these ideas of innovation, of productivity, with asking proper questions. Competitiveness and competition is the way that we can solve the problem, and it's not the problem at all. So we should be really careful not to change the rules in a way that the society will pay the bill. Thanks a lot.
Okay, thank you. And now over to Fabienne.
Well, there is a lot to be said here, and I could only quote my president, Benoît Cœuré. The title of one of these interviews on this subject, I think, is crystal clear. You have to listen to Mario Draghi. First of all, there are some observations and diagnoses that are difficult to dispute. The decline of the European economy, the possibly excessive nature of regulation, the absence of a European industrial policy, and so on. But as far as competition policy is concerned, which in fact occupies quite a limited place in the report, Mario Draghi has the merit of going beyond a sterile French debate, perhaps not only French debate, which consists of artificially opposing industrial policy and competition policy. But now, it's also true that competition authorities need to take a better look at what's going on around them. Let's think of Mario Draghi, what he calls innovation defense. In merger control, maybe we, the French authority, could perhaps take greater account, as the text already allows us to do, of economic progress and efficiency gains, maybe. Finally, as regards the wish to see the emergence of European and not national champions, we naturally share this wish, but the markets still need to be truly European, which they are not always because regulation is carried out at a national level. I'm thinking, for example, of the telecoms or retail banking sectors. So to conclude, I don't know if I would say our house is burning and we are looking the other way, to paraphrase a former French president. But one thing is certain, we need to adapt and quickly, and that means reflecting on our methods and our analytical tools.
Okay, thanks a lot. Now, there's obviously a lot more that could be said on the topic of this report, but I wanted to open up for questions for a second, maybe if you're interested to hear a bit more from one of our panelists, now is the moment. So I see a hand raised in the back. Please identify yourself.
Alexis Walkirs, I work for ECA Economics. I wanted to come back, a combination of the Draghi and Letta reports on, competitiveness and a number of things that have been said on legal certainty. I'm not totally fond of legal certainty for a number of things I could, discuss now, but let me keep it short. We have discussed legal certainty more on the new competition tool, much less on the problem of mergers below the thresholds. I think, there, what I heard from the different national competition authorities is that they needed more discretion, to put it that way. When we heard Massimo Motta yesterday on 102 guidelines, there was also this idea that the guidelines leave a lot of discretion to competition authorities. So the question, if you want, is how do you resolve legal certainty with the desire, apparently, of, and I could put it also on the internal market and consistency of approaches within the internal market and the discretion.
Okay. Anyone want to touch on this? Le magistrat.
Yes, legal certainty is the elephant in the room because, as I said, for example, we thought that Article 22 was better as the use of Article 102, and now there is a Illumina Grail case, and everybody is telling us, oh, Article 102, no question. So I have no answer to this question. As I said, we have to balance. Every time we take a decision, we have to balance. We cannot have the utmost legal certainty. Nobody will be happy, but we try to use it we try to use it carefully. That's the only answer I can tell.
My answer will be much simpler. Okay, excuse me.
Oh, sorry. Sorry. Shall I go on?
Yes.
Okay.
Please go.
I think that I agree there is no clear answer, but when designing, for example, a call-in rule, there are a lot of issues, for example, that can be put out and set out and that do give clarity and a certain degree of certainty as to there can always be a minimum threshold combined with a call-in option. There can be some requirements of timing by the competition authority. You cannot call in whenever a merger. There has to be some time limits, for example, from the time when it is made known to the authority, and it has to reach a decision within certain thresholds. And it definitely, if there's a call-in option, for example, like the Dutch system, where the Commission finds that there is a risk that a merger might be anti-competitive, it will have to substantiate it in a way. So, of course, there will be a lot of discretion and there will be some flexibility. That's the goal, to give discretion. But I think that when designing a rule that gives discretion, there are a lot of things that can be done to give clarity and certainty.
Okay, thanks.
And the simple answer, we don't check measures under the threshold. Honestly speaking, we believe that, of course, it's much easier for us because the threshold in Poland is on the really low level. And it's the simplest answer. If you have low level, then you are checking more than you would like to, but there's no case of measures under the threshold. But honestly speaking, for me, this legal certainty is something unique and it's the value we should keep on. If we set the threshold, it should be also the threshold for us, and we shouldn't make cases under the threshold. I believe it's something that this certainty should be something positive to the market and to entrepreneurs.
All right. Maybe one more question, if any, and don't hesitate, really don't hesitate. Going once, going twice, and I think we'll declare this panel is now complete. So thank you so much, all the panelists.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just a few words before you leave the room. Over this, it has been a very long journey. We started on Tuesday afternoon, and over these days I received many positive feedbacks and congratulations from the attendees. And I have to say that I agree with them. It has been terrific. Now, I shouldn't be the one saying that, but I think I can, and I have, for the simple reason that this is due to the hard work of so many people. So I think it's a moral duty for me to take this moment to thank all the people that worked on this event. Let me start with the partners, of course. They are crucial for the success of the festival. They are part of the festival. You know, they're just not contributing with ideas. They are bringing tremendous speakers. They choose fantastic topics, so they have to be really thanked for the work they do. And then I want to thank all the speakers in the plenary sessions, all the chairpersons of the various panels and roundtables that have been done during these days. I have to thank the staff and the technicians that have worked so hard to make it so smooth. I have to thank the young researchers that have submitted their papers, proposals, that have prepared the posters that have been shown in the lobby. And finally, of course, I have to thank all my colleagues that have worked so hard over the entire year. You know, on Monday we're going to start working on the next edition of the festival. And there is a lot of work that has been done by talented and devoted and passionate researchers and scholars and consultants from LAIR. So I cannot name all of them. I don't know whether you want to stand up so that people can see you. So all LAIR staff that have worked. Okay. Thank you so much. And last but not least, of course, I have to thank, I call the true boss of the festival. And Silvia, please take the big applause to her. So stay tuned and we'll see you next year. Bye-bye.